So with FreeNAS being like the established tool, I even think I used it 10 years ago or 15 years ago, maybe under a different name on off a floppy disk. I have a vague recollection of this. What is new that's coming up out of open source that may, be a more modern replacement? If you look at the UI, it looks very dated. As I said, the user experience around VMs is quite clunky. Is there anything new? Is anything fresh that's coming up? And also anything that's more single purpose towards NAS? Because the ZFS has so much built, the FreeNAS has so much built into it. It almost feels like this trying to do too much.
Yeah, and that's a valid criticism. And so when I was looking, I have caught some flack from the folks in the FreeNAS community for saying this because because people, they get very attached to it. They're very, very fans of FreeNAS, kind of like, the FreeBSD versus Linux fans and the Linux versus everything else fans. The FreeNAS people are like that. I mean, they really love this thing. And yet it's not really that great. It's good. It's undeniably good, and it's probably the best thing. Okay. But to say that it's great, I think is, you're fooling yourself. It's clunky. It's not easy to use in many ways, like you described. The jails, the VMs, especially the VMs, are just like kind of there. But I got to say, compared to Beehive on regular FreeBSD, FreeNAS is like head and shoulders above that, because Beehive doesn't even have documentation, let alone an interface. But even the plugins to FreeNAS that are supposed to be easy are actually not easy, and there's a lot of steps that you have to do to make things work. Yeah, and the whole thing looks kind of clunky and weird. They were gonna, totally refresh it. They came out with this FreeNAS 11 Corral a couple years ago now, and it looked great, but they kind of bet on the wrong horse, both personnel-wise and toolkit-wise, and ended up literally abandoning that whole fork of FreeNAS and abandoning everybody who was using it too. And, so I upgraded to Corral and ended up basically just blowing away my whole system and re-importing my data drives onto another FreeNAS 10 install once they abandoned Corral, because that was basically the only way to do it. They are improving FreeNAS. I'm actually amazed to say, I never thought I'd say this, but it's improved dramatically in the last year. And so they're doing things like they're adding Docker to it, native Docker containers. They've got a new user interface that, for real, that isn't quite so horrible.
Looking at Corral here, and it looks like, what I would expect from a 2017, 2018 kind of management software for a FreeNAS. It looks really slick,
pretty good, but it didn't do everything. So there wasn't yet user interface for all the functions. And the user interface toolkit that they used to build that thing apparently was deprecated. I don't remember what it was, but it was not a good thing. And they ended up just basically in trouble, not able to continue that thread, which is too bad, because Corral had native Docker containers. Like, instead of plugins and jails and all this, it was based around Docker containers, and it really actually did work. I was pretty excited about it. But
this is kind of making me wonder if there's an opportunity. All of these people that are coming up with a serverless framework every other weekend, kind of filling the space up. Maybe you guys should
do storage.
Check out Corral and storage and see if there's an opportunity here to make something that is really simple and single purpose, single-minded, to just give you a ZFS array and nothing else. Just be really easy to use.
Well, one thing that I wanted to point out, one of the ones that was pointed out to me when I was experimenting with FreeNAS is Rockstor. This is basically, if you look at rockstor.com, it's basically a modern rethink of the FreeNAS concept. So instead of being FreeBSD and ZFS, it's Linux and Btrfs.
Yeah.
And it's, it has Docker, it has modern programming concepts and so on. The real problem is that I tried Rockstor as well, and it wasn't ready for prime time.
Yeah.
Full stop. And unfortunately, like I said, with storage, That's the worst thing you can say about something for storage, is that, I got the feeling that it was going to not work, and that scared me. And then there's also been some problems. There were some problems with the RAID 5 in Btrfs, and to the point that basically, Btrfs, people are now using the Btrfs file system on top of basically old school RAID 5, like the Linux MD driver, as a way to get kind of work around.
I mean, the only place I've really seen Btrfs, I've never called it that before, is in SUSE Enterprise Linux. It's like I'm pretty sure it's a default partitioning scheme that they use, and I've also seen it sometimes with Docker containers as an overlay system.
Yeah,
but I haven't heard that it's as well thought of as ZFS.
It is not, and I think as a file system, it's pretty good. As a volume manager, because that's the thing. I mean, you've got file systems, which is basically, use Btrfs kind of like ext2 or 3 or 4. And as in that point, Btrfs is pretty good. Again, I'm not sure I'm really ready to go for it, but of course, I'm really not happy with ReFS on Windows and APFS on Mac either. So I'm a weird old curmudgeon. But the problem is the stuff underneath it, the whole volume management, flexibility, all that kind of stuff, just not there. So
great.
So Rockstor looks good. There's absolutely an opportunity, I think, for somebody to come up with a modern storage platform. The challenge is just like, how are you going to do it? I would imagine that you could do something pretty fantastic with an object store, like a distributed object store, and distributed nodes. And
I was surprised to see Minio was baked into FreeNAS. MinIO, because I saw S3, I'm going to enable that and see what it is, and then I looked up the port and I was like, I know what this is. I use this all the time. It wasn't called Minio anywhere, it wasn't acknowledged, but it was just like, here's a button, click it for S3, and it just worked. And so I think you're right, you're going to see more sort of like distributed object storage,
and that's a very new feature, by the way. That's something they just added. Really?
So having I think maybe Zol ZFS for Linux is interesting. Creating something around one of these immutable operating systems might be interesting too, like Linux Kit. Could you somehow install Zol on Docker's Linux Kit and have this immutable server image that you can just plug into a machine, and that's it? As you say,
Docker
the erase
brought to the storage world, and there are some enterprise storage companies doing that, but I'd love to see something like that. I mean, why not have a container that does deduplication, and a container that does, file sharing, and a container that does, data protection, and so on and so on and so on. Why not make your system run that way?
And if you need the Squid proxy server, add that on as another container. Yeah, absolutely. I think this could be an interesting area.
But for now, unfortunately, if you're sitting at home saying, I wish I had something like this, hear me now, believe me later, your best bet is to bite the bullet and run FreeNAS.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I spun it up. It was quite easy. It detected my drives.
And not only that, I will further tell you, get multiple drives so that you can run at least RAID Z, if not RAID Z2. Even if it makes you cry and feel like you're not getting your value out of what you bought, please run RAID Z2. If you have more than 3 or 4 drives, don't come crying to me when you lose your data.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree with you. Definitely get the redundancy in there.